Hello again. The usual suspects, by which I mean the BBC, the Guardian, and so on, are currently claiming that young black and ethnic minority people in Britain are being denied jobs because of structural or institutional racism. Now, the bit on the BBC website suggests that having a surname which might be hard to pronounce is a factor in being refused employment. I thought that instead of doing what I often do when reading such stuff, which consists of rolling my eyes and snorting in derision, I would treat these allegations seriously and see where they might get us. Let's look first at the BBC, where the headline is a quotation from 21-year-old Mary Ibiyimi from Glasgow, who says that employers ignore you if they can't pronounce your name. She continues, my surname isn't one a lot of people can pronounce. I feel employers are more likely to skip over it. I feel if you're from the black or Asian communities, if you have a hard-sounding name, then they are less likely to take the time to get to know the person, the pronunciation, and try to work with you as a person. Well, let's treat that as a serious suggestion. I notice that Mary Ibiyimi feels a lot. She feels this, she feels that. Incidentally, I can't see anything difficult about that name at all. It may well be Twi or Ashanti named, it's Ghanaian, but I mean, Ibiyimi, what's hard about pronouncing that? Rather than thinking about her feelings, though, why don't we have a look at a few facts? She specifically mentions Asian communities, and so I also give in the description to this video a link to the British government statistics on Chinese people living in Britain and how they are faring. Are young Chinese people, the Asian communities, which Mary Ibiyimi says are having trouble getting work because of their names, how are they managing? In the United Kingdom as a whole, 12.8% of young people between the ages of 16 and 24 are not in employment, education or training. The rate among Chinese young people is 6.2%, less than half the national average. Chinese surnames are famously difficult for Westerners to pronounce, but it doesn't seem to be a handicap for them, only apparently for black people. This is a bit odd. Looking still at the figures for how people of Chinese heritage are doing in Britain, I noticed something else interesting. Last week, the government released the figures for the ethnicity of those young people in Britain who got at least 3 A-levels at grade A. These are the sort of qualifications which will gain you admittance to the top universities in the country, Oxford and Cambridge, for example. I give a link to these figures too, above. One thing stands out very obviously. Just 12% of black students taking A-levels manage to get at least 3 at grade A. Among students of Chinese origin, the figure is 37%. In other words, Chinese students are 3 times as likely to have top marks in their A-levels as black students. Forgetting for a moment the ludicrous idea that the average employer is unable to pronounce Mary Ibiyimi's name, do any viewers think that perhaps those A-level scores have anything to do with the low levels of unemployment among young people from Chinese families? I have mentioned before, and not in a flattering or appreciative way, Halima Begum, who is in charge of the Runnymede Trust, one of the larger organisations in the United Kingdom devoted to stirring up racial divisions and encouraging hatred between ethnic groups. Here is what The Guardian quotes her as saying. Halima Begum, the director of the Runnymede Trust, said that she was absolutely appalled by the figures. That's the figures relating to youth unemployment. They don't just reconfirm that the pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on young black and ethnic minority communities. They confirm that the government has completely abrogated its duty of care, in particular to black British families and their children, she said. The government urgently needed to acknowledge major employment fragility, I should say, in ethnic minority communities and take concrete steps to address the issue, she added. I wonder if anybody here, anybody watching this, and this is a genuine question, can they explain to me why Chinese people don't suffer from this employment fragility? The figures show that, and I quote, 76% of Indian 16 to 64% were in employment, the same rate as for white British people. Well, no sign of employment fragility there either. It is a bit curious. This is, of course, why the expression BAME, which is black, Asian and minority ethnic, is so horribly misleading. By lumping everybody together in this way, it is possible to present problems relating to education and unemployment which affect only black people as being part of some wider difficulty relating to structural racism. It's a lie. Looking again at the government statistics to which I give a link, I wonder if anybody would care to hazard a guess as to the members of which ethnic group are least likely to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act and who is most likely to be detained in this way. Those who guess that Chinese people, closely followed by Indians, had the lowest rates and that black Caribbeans are highest may pat themselves on the back. A lot of the race relations industry in this country is concerned with taking problems suffered by one small community and trying to pretend that they are part of a wider problem involving everybody whose skin is not white. This is quite false and it creates unnecessary racial tension. The time is fast drawing near when we will have to look seriously at things like racism and ask ourselves what is really going on. The recent report commissioned by the government on this subject made a good start, and the howls of protest from places like the BBC and newspapers like The Guardian show that these people were on the right track.